Hi, Jamie Edwards from jamieedwards.com, and today I want to talk to you about software estimation and specifically what it means on a lean or agile project. Now, there's some people doing some construction in my neighborhood, so I'm hoping we won't get interrupted too much by how loud they are, but we'll just go with this and see how it goes. So I want to try approaching this from a little bit of a different perspective. You know, there's a lot of videos and books and blogs and a lot of experience out there about software estimation, and it usually focuses on the best way to be more accurate. I want to try approaching this instead from the standpoint of if someone is a business owner or they're a product manager or a product owner or an entrepreneur and they're about to build a new product or a new offering for the market, or they're going to make a significant change, I'd like to talk a little bit about what kind of expectations are realistic and how to look at estimates. So the first thing we can talk about is, what is an estimate? Well, an estimate is simply someone's opinion or judgment of how long something's going to take to do. If you think about if you go to your local mechanic and you ask him to estimate the damages to your car, he's going to use his experience, maybe some diagnostic tools, and maybe documentation and things like manuals about your specific automobile to figure out about how much time it's going to take to fix, and then combine that with, you know, things like the actual costs of physical goods that need to be used, like parts to fix the car. When we're working in software, we also have moving parts and we have labor and things like that. However, the nature of software development, it's especially custom software development, it's significantly more complicated than an automobile. I'd say it's actually significantly more complicated than building a skyscraper. The reason why is when you look at an estimate, you're handed, this is how much time it's going to take to get this done. And typically on software projects, time equates to cost. What do I mean by that? Well, if it takes you 10 hours to do something, usually companies who employ somebody and they're trying to look at how efficient that resource is, which I'm going to come back to that because I think that's part of the problem. They look at how many hours the person has spent with a given task, writing code, sitting in a meeting, testing, whatever that task is. And they look at, okay, if I'm paying this person salaried per year and I divide it up and figure out how much time that is, you know, what percentage of that total salary, that number of hours they spent was, and what did I get for it? Or if it's in more of like a professional services or consulting engagement, you might look at, for a given project, the consulting company maybe, or the professional services company that's building my software for me, charged me X and their developers are working Y, or this many hours. The thought is that, you know, when we go and we buy, you know, at our local supermarket, some hot dog buns, or I don't know why I use that example, or we buy milk or whatever, you know, we look at the quantity, right? We look at how many ounces am I getting, how many gallons, how many, you know, pounds of flour or something like that. And often, because, you know, things that are commodities and that are expensive, we're looking for the best deal. You know, we look at, okay, I can buy this product which has twice the amount for half the cost. And as humans and as, you know, money being the way that we exchange a lot of value in this world, people tend to gravitate towards cost just psychologically. So, you know, if I'm looking at purchasing a car, there's things about the car, maybe aesthetically or its brand recognition or special features, that I'm going to take all those things into account when I figure out if I want to purchase that car. But ultimately, if I can't afford it, the deal's kind of done. Or if it's, you know, exorbitantly expensive and I just think, you know, there's no way I want to spend that kind of money on a car. For some folks who have a lot more money available, price is not so much an issue as features. For other folks that don't have much money, price often becomes the primary thing they're concerned about. So, you know, why am I going over this? Why did I bring this all up? Well, if you're about to embark on bringing a new product or a significant change to a product to market, One of the things that it's super easy for all of us to understand is cost based on the amount of time something takes. And so, anybody who's been on a software project or who's purchased professional services from a consulting company to do work is familiar with an estimation and scoping activity of some sort. So, let's say a customer were to come to me and say, I'm thinking of building this product. Here's my, 15 to 20 features of that product. How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? Before I get into that conversation with that potential customer, I would have a level setting conversation with them and get them to understand a lot of the things that I talked about yesterday in the minimum viable product video. I want that customer to understand first, we are not going to help you be successful with your product in the market if we just build what you just came to us with. So one of the things as a consultant, and I don't care if you're a consultant in software or you're a consultant in, legal or anything like that. One of the things consultants often need to do, and really anybody who's an employee should do this, is when someone comes to you and asks you to do something, don't just agree to the terms. You need to understand what they want and often reset the expectations a little bit. So, one of the expectations that many businesses and product owners have when they go to purchase professional services or they go to start a new project is, my expectation is, I know everything that I need to build a successful product, and I just need to hand it to someone and have them tell me how much is it going to cost so I can decide if I can afford it. And it's a very logical set of arguments, and I totally understand why non-technical people who don't build the software themselves would see it that way. It's completely logical. Here's the rub. It isn't logical when you do understand what it takes to build software. First of all, if we think back to, let's say, World War II, when, across much of the world, people were manufacturing, unfortunately, weaponry and things like medical kits and things like this. When you're manufacturing a physical product, even if there's 50 steps to manufacture that product, once you've kind of manufactured it a couple times, and now you want to scale that out and build, 100,000 bombs or, 50 tanks or something like that. Every one of those steps that it takes, every process that building of that thing goes through, there's not much variability to it. Meaning, if I've got like a metal plate and I need to drill a hole in the center of it, and it takes somebody, 5 minutes or 2 minutes to take that metal plate, set it onto a drill press, align it properly, and pull it down and, bore the hole through the plate. That's a pretty repeatable, low variability exercise, meaning there's only so many things that can go wrong. The drill bit hole can be off a little bit, the material could have some flaw in the metal, things like that. So as a company who's looking at manufacturing of that product, if they can find a way to cut down the time it takes to drill that plate from 2 minutes to, let's say, 1 minute across hundreds of thousands of versions of that product that they're building, think about that. That's a time savings and that's a cost savings. And immediately that's going to be less cost, which is hopefully going to contribute to more revenue for, unfortunately, like a weapons manufacturer maybe in this case. I don't know why I use that example. It's just a manufacturing example. In software, however, it's the flip side. Everything you're doing to develop software is high variability, meaning the number of things that could go wrong. And I don't want to say wrong because these aren't wrong. These are the number of unpredictable outcomes. So things that we didn't think about when we went about first starting a task are so much larger in software that the thought, is I want to get my product quicker. So I'll look at what everybody's doing and how long it's taking to do things, and if things feel like they're taking too long, I'll try to shorten them so we can save money, right? And again, this is that logical, manufacturing-based low variability argument that I'm trying to get you to understand isn't true in software development. First of all, so there's a really good book out there, I'll link to it below the video, called Principles of Product Development Flow. And it specifically has to do with it. First of all, it's a very academic book. There's all kinds of mathematic formulas in it. It's not a light read for people. But if you're really interested in this stuff, I would encourage you to read it. The author of that book explains how when we build software, we're often being asked to do something that's never been done before. And what I mean by that is, I might be somebody who's been writing Ruby code or .NET code for 10 years, and I've used a set of technologies that are built with Ruby on 4 or 5 different projects before, and I may be really experienced with that language, and I've had several projects under my belt. But when I go to do a new effort, so somebody asked me to build something new, I may have used that language, used that framework, had a ton of experience, but the requirements they're asking me to satisfy and what they want me to do, I've never usually satisfied those before. For example, when I got into consulting, most of my work before consulting was in manufacturing and pharmaceutical companies. When I came to Austin about 10 years ago and worked with way more companies, I got exposed to oil and gas and finance and real estate and all these little niche markets. And every time you go to write code for one of those niche markets, you're not just challenged by the technology you have to use, you're challenged by trying to understand what are some of the unique concerns in that business that I have to deal with, okay? At that moment, a software developer or an architect who's asked to estimate, they're at the behest of how well they can communicate with the person who wants the product and understand everything about that business and that problem case. Here's the thing, the nature of humans is, if you think about when you were a child and you were first learning English, every single word you had to learn the intent and you had to ask for clarifications on things and you didn't know what you knew. And then you got to a point where you spoke fluently and you didn't even think about it. And you realized, what, I can tell somebody something and I don't have to use as many words. I can use maybe an acronym, or I can use, a phrase that people, or a familiar phrase that really means a lot more. Okay, why do I talk about this? Well, if you're going to work with somebody in, let's say, oil and gas, they're going to use a bunch of acronyms and terms and concepts that they're really familiar with in oil and gas, and they know the implications of everything that means. As the software developer or the technologist that's being asked to do some work on behalf of that, they don't know all those things. And me as a consultant, I did it for about, again, 10 years, the last 10 years, I got really good at asking customers a lot more questions to try to understand the scope of the problem. However, I will tell you with a straight face and completely, and this is true of everybody I've talked to in consulting, no matter how good you think you have your arms around a problem, there's always going to be some things that whoever you're working with didn't think of that they needed to tell you, okay? So if you're a product owner and you're in, let's say you're in the real estate business and you're working with someone and you're dealing with a web page that they're going to build for you that has something to do with real estate pricing, okay? If you leave out a detail about how, let's say, 15 of the fields are all affected by some tax calculation, and this is something you in real estate, this, you live and breathe it, it's part of your business, it's not a big deal at all, you're like, well, of course, we always have this aspect of tax that affects everything. Well, if you leave that detail out and you get a developer started working on building something and he estimated ahead of time, I think this is going to take me X number of hours. And in the middle of him building that, oh, there goes a jackhammer. I'm sure you can hear that in the background. Hopefully you can still hear me. If he goes about building that, and then in the middle of building it or close to the end, you come back to him and it's totally understandable and go, none of these numbers look right. They're not taking into account this issue related to tax. It's a standard thing in real estate. We always do this. Well, it may seem simple to you as a product owner that all the person needs to do is go into 10 fields and go add some aspect of the calculation that's affected by this tax change. However, software development, and this is something that I want to make sure product owners and product managers and entrepreneurs realize, software development, especially custom software development, is extremely flexible, meaning you can take one person and they can choose from maybe 50 different ways to solve the same problem. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean it's designed different and it's apparent to you as the person using the product. I mean, underneath the covers, think of like in your car, you open up the engine could look 50 different ways, but when you drive the car, the response is exactly the same. The fuel efficiency is exactly the same. Everything about that car works exactly the same from your experience, but inside, the engine's totally different, okay? Well, when you as a product owner or a business owner go to someone and ask them to make a modification to something they already estimated, depending on how they chose to solve the problem, in other words, build the engine in my analogy, making that change may be extremely complicated and may require basically tearing apart the original design and completely putting it back together, okay? If you've built any software and maybe you are a product manager or a product owner or you're somebody who doesn't write code, this is not going to be new to you, right? This is not news to you. You've run into this before. And it's always frustrating, right? You're like, oh, I thought this was only going to take this long. Now I realize it's this big complicated thing. Here's the issue. When teams estimate work and then they communicate those estimates to the business, it's just part of human psychology that if you tell me something's going to cost $50 and then a week later you tell me it's going to cost $200, I'm probably going to be pissed off, right? Even if you tell me ahead of time, look, this is an estimate, it may be off, well, you can say, yeah, that's fine, but if someone comes back to you and tells you the estimate's 10 times larger or 50 times larger, you're going to be really frustrated and upset about it, okay? So that's a dynamic that we can't change about software development. You know, I've watched some other videos and read some other things. There's some really well-known books also from like Microsoft Press on estimation where people talk about the number of things that can go wrong on a project or just be things you don't think about. And, how, you know, there's a huge list. People go on vacation. They have to participate in things they didn't plan in. They realize there's security concerns that nobody communicated at the beginning. Really, all of these things point to the fact that as humans, today at least, we don't have some, you know, intelligent machine learning algorithm doing this for us, but as humans today, we don't have a good track record at all. In my personal opinion, all I can give you is my personal opinion after 20 years and many companies, we have a horrible track record of taking a large sum of work, like a product with 50 features, and estimating reliably how much it's going to take to build all that. Part of the reason is that if there's one little aspect that we didn't think about, it has ripple effects, because often, like my tax example, it's not just that I didn't think of the tax issue and it affected one aspect of the product. It might have affected 10 fields. Or think of in a more complicated product. Let's say you're scoping something out that's going to take 2 years to build and it has 130 screens or something crazy. Well, every mistake you make with estimation, and by mistake I mean something in the scope of the project that you just didn't think about. It's not the product owner's fault, it's not the software development's fault, it's just human nature. We're not perfect. We're not. We're going to forget things. Well, that has huge ripple effects on a project, and typically what happens is everybody gets together and they go through the list of all the requirements and they do some fudge factoring. They go, well, I think it'll take maybe about 5% more here and 10% more there, or 40 more hours here or 30 more hours here, or if you're doing story points, I'm bumping it from a 3 to a 5 or a 7 to a 9, whatever way you want to account for that change. Here's what ends up usually happening though, is when those impacts are discovered, a software development team who's being held to estimates is already under pressure to meet the original estimate that the product owner has in their mind. At the end of this week, I'm going to get X. And as soon as they know this is going to take longer, there's a lot of anxiety that creates for software developers. So that's the first thing I want to just make sure that you understand. If you're a product owner or an entrepreneur or a project manager, every time a software developer realizes something's going to take longer than he thought, it creates huge anxiety for them. And the reason why is because most software developers that I've known and met over my career, they're craftsmen. Meaning they take huge pride in their work. They care about the quality a lot. They care about the code performing well a lot. The only developers I ever run across that don't care about that, it's because they've become jaded, because they've been asked by the business to meet unrealistic expectations for so many years that they sort of fall into this, I just don't care anymore mindset. The vast majority of software developers or professional technologists, I don't care if you're talking about DevOps, UX, QA testers, anybody in those roles, in engineering roles, really take pride in their work. Because if you think about it, if I'm a software developer and I build a feature and I'm putting my name on it and I have to support it and I'm going to put it into production in front of users, I don't want it to blow up. I don't want it to have errors. I don't want it to have problems. I'm really going to care about it. And hopefully I'm doing pair programming and maybe doing pull request reviews or code reviews. If I'm not doing pair programming, we'll talk about that in a whole nother video. But what I want to get across is the biggest challenge with estimates is the dynamic in motivation between the business and developers. Developers want to do a quality job. They want to make you happy. They want your customers to be successful. They want solid code. What you want, maybe on the business side, is you want to feel like you're getting the value for the money you're paying, okay? The way I think we can help this dynamic, because today it doesn't work very well. Developers find things take longer, they disappoint the business. The business still expects them to meet the original estimate, and developers often, and I'm including myself in this, we will compromise, not because we want to. We hate to compromise. I mean, technologists, when we're asked to cut corners, and often it's not that we're asked, we're forced to cut corners. Nothing frustrates a technologist more than cutting corners. So how can we help technologists not cut corners? And how can we help the business feel more confident that they're going to get value for the money they put in? There's two things. One is, on the business side, the way that they can get more value and feel more confident is to stop looking so much at how much things cost to build and start looking at, is what I'm building and releasing to my customers getting me closer to the business outcome that I want? Meaning, if somebody goes into business with a new product, they're going to have sales and revenue goals. I want to make, $40 million this year from this product. So the real question when a software development team, week to week is producing value is not how much money am I spending building the software and how much is getting done. It's when I release something, in a lean methodology, every week or every day, how much is it impacting my revenue, my outcome, the business goal I'm going for? That's the most important thing to the business. That's way more important than how efficient the software development team is at building the functionality. Because here's the thing, you might scope out 10 features and you theorize that it's going to take those 10 to make the $40 million in revenue that year. And if you're using a lean methodology, you might get through sprint 3 and find out your customer wants something slightly different. You adapt, you release that change in a week, and you all of a sudden hit your revenue goal. Okay, that would be astronomical if you hit a $40 million revenue goal in that short a period of time. But this is my point, is that it's kind of like game theory. Some of this is psychology. If you tell someone, hey, you have up to 10 months to build something, well, they're going to take the full 10 months. If you say you have 2 weeks to clean your room, if it's a child or something, they tend to take the full 2 weeks. But if you don't give someone an estimate, if you just say, I need to reach this outcome, I need to make this money, I need customers to hit this NPR score of satisfaction, whatever that measurable business outcome is, well then you're freeing the software development team to do whatever they need to take the highest quality engineering practices that they're experts at. You as a product owner or a business manager or a entrepreneur are not an expert at that. They're free to take the actions they need to help you realize that outcome. Now that can feel really scary as a product owner or a business owner or an entrepreneur, because we as humans we want to control, or we want to feel like we're in control, when the best products out there that I've ever used or seen, it was because there was the collaboration of a lot of smart people who put their ego aside and decided that the product's success was more important than anybody else, and that's how they won in the market. And so if you are someone who's not a technologist, meaning you understand technology but you couldn't write the code, you couldn't design the software architecture, you couldn't build the product, the more you can trust the people who you've employed to do good work and not base it on how long it takes, but base it on trusting that they're going to make the best decisions for you because they care about you and they care about the success of the business. I mean, think about it. If I'm a software developer and I'm working for a manager at a big company, if the product meets its deadlines and it hits its expectations, we expected to build this thing in 10 months, but what's delivered to the market doesn't hit the revenue goals, I'm not going to get a raise. I'm not going to get a promotion. Nobody else is going to get rewarded. The way I'm going to get rewarded is if the business outcome gets reached, which is profitability and revenue goals, or maybe cost-cutting goals. That's what's going to make me make money. So I, as a software developer or a technologist, can't really help you on the business side with meeting that need if you lock me into building everything that you've designed ahead of time and you don't let me realign your expectations with how you deliver your product to everything I talked about in the minimum viable product in lean software development videos, okay? So go watch those videos again if you think part of what I'm talking about is quackery. Where am I going with all this? Well, first of all, the jackhammer again, and I really hope, man, that is pretty loud. I'm just looking at my mic level. Hopefully you can still hear me. If you're coming to a consultancy, let's say, or a professional services organization, or a big company like Microsoft Consulting or ThoughtWorks or somebody like this, and you're like, I have this idea for this new product, I want to release it to market. What I would suggest to you, if you really want to be not your average entrepreneur or product owner or product manager, if you really want to show that you recognize how to be successful with software, which is what I'm trying to teach you on this channel, the smartest way I think that you can have the biggest chance of success is to go to a company and look for a company that understands what I'm talking about, that understands you're not going to build something and release it and be successful or fail. You should budget enough to release your core theory of value plus those 2 features that delight. Go back and watch the MVP video again if you need a refresher on that. And have that budget left over that you need 6 to 12 times that budget to adapt and change and modify your product. And remember, not the whole product. You're not going to build the whole product. Just that core theory of value till you find that market fit. And when I talked about market fit yesterday, I know one of the things I started to think about, I was watching the video myself afterwards, was there may be a lot of people that think that only applies to a brand new product. If you've got a product that you've been selling for years and maybe one major page of it is a grid of some sort, like a tabular interface, or I'm sorry, a sectional interface like Microsoft Excel looking user interface. And users go in there and they edit a lot of data and they sort things and they run calculations. And maybe the new thing you want to do is you're going to build a whole new version of that screen and you bring in some UI designers and you come up with a completely different way of envisioning it. Well, building that whole new thing to satisfy your customer, if you just look at it like we're just going to redesign what's already there and build the whole thing and give it to them and I hope it's good, you're missing out on lean product management again and on lean software development. You really want to instead build a super minimal version of that screen that doesn't do everything that the last version did. It just does, like maybe it just loads the data from your old system and presents it in the new way that's really showing the core theory of value. Meaning maybe the problem with the prior version of that Excel interface that you had in your product was I couldn't merge two contacts together, or I couldn't, copy, let's say 10 rows at a time and move it to the end. I mean, I'm just coming up with random things here, but I'm trying to give you an idea. Maybe that's the thing that for years all your customers have said, man, if you guys could make us do this merge thing, that would solve so many problems. Rather than, rebuilding that whole screen and then solving the merge problem as part of it and having to, support everything that screen supports today. It may have delete and edit and update and send and email and share and all these actions. Just build a super minimal prototype that all it does is shows the merging that's working. And then again, maybe those two features that delight from that other video. And find out, validate, is this how you want that feature to be solved? If you get a yes, then start working on the next feature that you used to have in the prior version. Like maybe you add the delete function back in, maybe you add the edit function back in, and work on only that in the same fashion. You're going to roll it out right away and have a limited audience look at it and validate that you're going in the right direction. The reason why it's better to do this than just scope the whole thing and do it at once is also because why would you want to invest, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to rebuild functionally the same product with one or two features when instead you could have a dramatically better product and get, exponential growth or just huge opportunities for usability and being able to go out and sell how great your new product is. So, I'd have too many companies, unfortunately, that would come to my last employer, the consultancy I worked for, and they would want to re-platform. We've got this product, we've had it for 15 years, we want to do some new things, and the technology we're using it in is moldy and old, and I can't find, let's say, COBOL developers or C++ developers that I can pay, they're too expensive, so we want to move it to Java or something. And their tendency would be to walk us through redesigning the whole product they already had that looked like slightly different in Java or in C#. And when you think about that kind of activity from a consulting company standpoint, from the company that's going to do the work, it's like cha-ching, wow, we're building this whole new huge thing. But for value for that customer, that's horrible value because they're really just going to get a few changes or be on a new platform. They have to spend all that money. Instead, it's a huge opportunity to offer a dramatically better product. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you let go of the need to estimate exactly how long it's going to take to build a product and you go into it with the mindset, I'm going to build the same thing. You're not going to build the same thing. You're going to build something new. Okay, so coming back to estimates, okay, I think the time when estimates are appropriate is when a company comes to a development team and says, I've got a product I want to build. How much will it take to build this whole product? Instead, I think the expectations should be reset. So the conversation goes, how much do you have to spend on building a product over 12 months or over 6 months? And the reason why is because we're going to need to change the product significantly as it comes to market and as we find out exactly what your users want. So we need you to budget ahead of time. That's in that lean video. I don't want to beat that into the ground. The other thing is we're also going to find that there's things that you didn't think to tell us when we designed the product, and they're going to be deal breakers for you. This is just what I run into all the time. This is not an exception. This is the rule. There's going to be things that product owner or that manager or that founder of that company realizes, if I don't add this feature, I don't have a product, right? Well, every time that happens, it could cause huge ripple effects, and then you're going to waste time going back to that original huge schedule, going through all the tasks, figuring out what that really means, when instead you could just, let's get started, we're going to fix it right now. Let's get started, we're going to fix it right now. Now, when people hear me talk about that, often they think, I know a lot of immature Agile teams, they look at their backlog again and again. In the Agile project management video, I talked about this. They load it up with everything they think they're going to do. We're going to start here, then we'll do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. And if you look at an Agile backlog, at a point in time, like a point in time snapshot at any given day, it looks like a sequential list. We're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. But a true Agile backlog is not a list. It's a queue. Meaning, if you know what a queue system is, it's something where you've got a list, but at any time, somebody can insert new items into the list, and not at the end, at the top or at the middle, or they can remove items from the list, or they can reshuffle them. So if you choose to put what you're going to build in your product in a backlog, it's silly to think about estimating everything you're going to build and getting a whole bunch of detail behind that, because you're looking at your backlog like a list of what you're going to build. And it's not. It's a holding place for your ideas at a point in time. And the moment you release Sprint 1's work, or if you're doing Kanban, your first task that goes to production that has something visible the user can use, the moment the user sees something, if you are not an Agile organization, you're just going to release it and then look at it a little bit and start building the next feature, and look at it a little bit and start the next feature. If you are an Agile organization, you're going to measure what impact is this having, this thing I just released, how much closer is it getting me to my outcome, okay? How do we measure how features being released relate to an outcome? The way we do this is by recording what some people call application insights or measures. So, if you think about if you went out there and you were going to advertise on Facebook, okay? And I don't know if you know much about Facebook advertising, but I'll just give you a super high level of it. You create an advertisement out there and you serve it to people on Facebook, and it's going to go in front of a whole bunch of people's news feeds as they're scrolling through, and a huge majority of people are going to completely ignore it. And some people are going to see it, and then some people are going to click it, okay? Well, if your advertising campaign, you're relying on, I need at least, let's say, 50 people to click my ad a day, okay? You could design 50 different ads with different images and different wording and different calls to action that all try to hit that 50 clicks number. But until you hit that special advertisement that just clicks with your audience, it draws people's attention, they go, okay, yeah, I'm going to click this. Does it really matter how much you're spending to build ad 1 versus ad 2 versus ad 3? No, you just want to get an ad done, get it out there, and then find out, am I getting the click-through rate? It's the same thing with software. So if your goal is, I need to increase revenues by 15%, what's the thing in your backlog that you've theorized is going to make the impact to reduce that revenue by 15%? It's probably not everything in that backlog. It's probably one thing. And all you need to do is build that one thing, get it in front of a representative pool of customers that you can measure the impact, and see if it's causing more signups. See if it's reducing the time it takes to do a task. See if it's doing whatever it needs to do. And whatever pool of people that you need to put that change in front of to measure the impact. And you've probably heard of A/B testing, and that's exactly what that is. That's where you have, let's say a product in one state, users have been using it for a while, and you introduce a change to it, one change, and you now serve that to a somewhat identical pool of users, and you measure, did my change have the business impact that I theorized or not? One of the big problems with teams that every sprint or all the time are introducing new features and changes into their products all the time is it makes it nearly impossible to A/B test. If you build, let's say, 3 features as a minimum viable product, and you put it out in front of your customer after 2 weeks, and immediately the team starts working on 4 new features, and then in 2 more weeks they release it, that's only given you 2 weeks to measure what was the impact of my first release. Meaning, like, the people who are using what I did the first 2 weeks, how close did that get to my business outcome? Now, if you want to measure, I just released something new, did what I just released make a positive or negative impact on what I just measured before? Well, if you just changed 5 different things, you have no idea. I mean, there's some ways you can sometimes figure it out, but often, the more changes, the more variables you introduce to a release, the harder it is to attribute a change to a business outcome to which one of those changes caused the business outcome. And this is why, like, internet marketers, for example, if they have an ad they're running or an opt-in form or a landing page where they're trying to draw attention to their product, if they're A/B testing, they'll change, like, they'll have a whole page that's trying to sell you, you know, I don't know, like supplements or something like that. And their A/B test will be the exact same sales page, 2 versions of it, where the only difference is the headline. And they'll run it in front of, let's say, 1,000 people. And if, you know, let's say 20% more people buy the product with this headline than this headline after like 1,000 people, they might make a decision. I'm getting a better, you know, purchase rate through this one. Well, if they have the A version is this sales letter and the B version is this sales letter and it's got totally different wording and different highlights and different colors and a different headline, well then, if all of a sudden this starts receiving better click-through rates or more people are buying because of it, how do you know which aspect of all those changes that you made led to the outcome that you wanted? So why am I saying this? Well, the reason I'm saying this is one of the things that companies are always concerned about when they're working on software projects is, are my people working as efficiently as possible? And they treat developers like a battery for functionality, meaning like I plug in this battery and it's constantly pushing out changes, pushing out changes, pushing out changes. Well, if we want to do lean software delivery and we want to actually make a change, measure its impact, and then decide what we're going to do, we're going to have lag time. We're going to have periods of time between when we made a release and when we're ready to act on feedback from that release that there aren't active features for the team to work on. And the tempting thing that a lot of companies do is they simply get that team building features that they think the customer is going to want. And what ends up happening then is, while they're working on it, feedback comes in from the first release, and all of a sudden, hey, can you stop everything you were building for the next release and come make this change based on feedback? And that pattern suddenly, with just a few releases, folks that are listening, especially non-technical folks, you get into a situation where developers are making compromises, the quality of the product goes down, you get technical debt, which I'm sure you've heard about, means people make substandard technology decisions just to get the thing out there. And this is what leads to companies being like, hey, why did I have this super clean product? It was high quality, it hardly had any bugs, I could release changes every 2 weeks, and now it costs me like 10 times longer, and there's all these problems every time I release it to production. Well, the reason why is because you're never giving the team a chance to slow the hell down and catch up on all the compromises they've had to make to just keep going, marching, building features. So I'm a big proponent of, you know, whether you want to call it biz DevOps, or there's a lot of different terms for it, but, you know, developers traditionally a lot of times have been separated from business decisions on what's going to be built. You know, the product owner, the product managers, the entrepreneur, founders, whoever, they talk to the business, they understand the business problems, they try to make all these, you know, educated decisions based on data, and then they kind of treat people like code monkeys who are developers. Here you go, here's what the, you know, market needs, just go build it. Instead, partnering with the development team and looking at them as a key partner in your success and taking them seriously. When a development team tells you as a product owner or product manager, we cannot build more features without destabilizing your product. If we keep building features this release, we're making it more complicated, we're falling behind on our testing, the product's not going to meet the quality that you're going to need, it's going to slow down your ability to adapt, then you need to listen to the developers and do that. Because if you don't, you're simply delaying a really bad outcome. And anyone who's worked at a company and been frustrated with the rate that the product changes and how complicated it's become, it's simply because of that mindset of developers are batteries. We plug them in, they produce features, and that's their whole purpose in life. No, their purpose in life too is to advise you in the business when it's time that you need to yield to their expertise and just eat the cost. It's usually not a big one, especially if you do it when you're asked. You know, if somebody gets a toothache, right, and they haven't been brushing their teeth enough, and they get a cavity, and the dentist tells them, you need to drill out this cavity, And they're so busy, well, I want to eat. I don't want to drill out the cavity. You know what happens, right? Over time, root canal, right? This is the same thing with software development. If software developers tell you, hey, you've been pushing us so hard to get features out, we've realized the test coverage isn't what it needs to be, or we've realized there's some patterns people aren't following and the code's fragmented, it's become a problem. It's the same thing as a cavity. If you don't let the team fix it then, it's going to become the functional equivalent on a software development team, a root canal in the future. And the root canal is not going to just be, you know, oh, well, now I just need to make a few changes. It's going to be, this product is losing money and I'm throwing developer after developer after developer at it, and it's gotten complicated and we have 8 layers of middle management and this thing's a nightmare. Who likes to work on projects like that? I know I don't. I hate that. So this talk, what I'm trying to get across is you can watch so many videos on how to estimate, you know, planning poker, you know, estimating, buffering higher for, you know, if you're somebody who's more experienced, you're going to hand the estimate to someone who's less experienced, you know, accounting for that. You know, I'm not going to waste your time going over that. Search YouTube, search Google, you know, there's some great videos out there on estimating. What I want to get across in this video is the implications of, as a product owner, you looking at estimating how fast the team's moving as your indicator to the efficiency of how you're using technology. The real place you should be focusing to look at the efficiency of your use of technology is each release that's happening, is each change that's happening getting me closer to the measurable business outcome I want? And I will talk in a future video specifically about how to figure out what to measure. I mean, that's an actually pretty complicated topic because it really depends a lot on what business you're in. There's a lot of variables. But, you know, again, I talked about the business model canvas in the MVP video. Letting that business model canvas be your guiding star, what it's going to help you do is every time you release a feature, every time the team builds a feature, you need to, as a team, think, how are we going to measure who's clicking on that feature? How are we going to measure if it's actually getting used? How are we going to measure how it's impacting our business outcome? And every little change you make, even if it takes 2 days to make a change, if that's going to impact the business, you need to figure out, how do I measure the impact, not how long is it going to take? Because if you're only making a little tiny change at a time, a little tiny change at a time, a little tiny change at a time, and someone's estimate is wrong, it could be hugely off, but it's only being off about a small thing that's being changed. If the estimates are off for something you estimate that's a year's worth of work and they're wrong, well, now you've got a year's worth of work that the quantity, the number, the magnitude rather, of change that when that estimate turns out to be wrong ends up being in the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars off versus the hundreds to $1,000 off, you know, if you're doing very little incremental changes. So hopefully that was helpful. I will try to touch back on this again. I know one of the things that's going to help is if I start talking to you, I think a little bit about my thoughts on Kanban and why I believe that's superior on most teams to doing Agile sprints and scrums. I'm not one of these people who's going to probably tell you this is the one way to do it. Every company's different, every situation's unique. But what I will tell you is, as a product owner, as a product manager, as an entrepreneur, the better job you can do finding out a vendor, a technology vendor that you trust, that you know does quality work. You look into their, you look into their referrals, you get validation that they're a good company, you maybe talk to their partners, and you validate that they understand this concept of lean, and they understand you're gonna have to release multiple changes to market, and that you need to do little ones at a time, and they're gonna help you measure the outcome of those changes. That's the partner or the type of person that you want to find to be successful with software. You don't want to find the cheapest vendor that will give you everything you want for the cheapest price, because then all they want is they want a big amount of work to build. That's how they're going to make their money. They don't want you to be successful, because Getting you to be successful takes everything I'm sharing with you on this channel. It's more work, right? To sell what I'm talking about to you as a solution, I can't just come in with a spreadsheet and go, here's what all my developers estimated, here's how we're going to price it, here's your price. I have to sit with you and explain, here's how you can be successful in software. You may not even understand a lot of this, but we care about your success, not just the money we make. We want you to be successful in your business. And for you to be successful in your business by using software, here are some things that you just need to understand that you may not have been exposed to yet, you know? And I think if we as software developers and we as people who work for maybe consultancies want to be more ethical, and we want to be more concerned and compassionate about our customers, which is what this is all about, right? Customers are paying us, but we need to care for them. We need to care about their outcome, because if you think about it, if you make $2 million off a customer building something for them and they pay you the $2 million but their business folds, are they going to come back to you in the future and want to spend more money? Hell no. But if you show them, we care about your business, we want you to be successful, well, then when they're successful, they're going to then come to you with more work. And why change the terms? You need to, I think we as developers need to, rather than sitting around and bitching about how much we hate estimates and we hate that people don't get, why they're a problem, I think we need to band together to do a better job of effectively communicating to product owners and product managers and entrepreneurs how important outcome-based work in software is, and how off from that traditional project management is, and how even though they may have worked in software and been successful for a 10 to 20 year career and feel like they got this, we can make them so much more successful if they're willing to sit with us and be exposed to these ideas. And we have to care enough about this. We can't just complain about it. We have to care about getting to be better, effective communicators. And that is actually my whole goal of these videos and my program, really, to coach software developers and product owners. I really want to help people be able to effectively communicate the importance of lean software development to people that don't understand it so that they can build great products. That's my mission kind of in my career right now. I've been a software developer or architect for 20 years. I'm not going to get, way better at coding if I do it for another 20 years. I mean, sure, there's always room for improvement. I'm not saying I'm a rock star developer, and I hate that term. But the biggest thing is I want to see businesses that use software have a higher success rate. And I want to see software developers and testers and architects and ops people and everybody who's involved in building software love their job more, complain less, be frustrated less with the industry, feel more empowered. And I think the way that we do that is we have to commit ourselves to really taking the time that it takes to really talk to people about what's changing in the industry and what we found works and what we found doesn't work. And what I guess I'm saying today is let go of your paranoia around whether you have enough money to build everything in your vision, and concentrate on the business outcomes, and realize that software is extremely variable and uncertain, and that the chance of you getting things on time where there weren't corners cut and people potentially hiding quality issues from the code going, I'll figure that later, is extremely high in software development. So the takeaway from this is, when you get an estimate or a number for something, there can be a margin of error, meaning how likely is it that this number is, the probability that this is an accurate number. And sometimes, like, a good example of this is exit polls in a presidential election, right? They'll be like, the margin of error is 3%. So really what that's supposed to mean is if I get this number and I bump it up by 3 or bump it down by 3, it's gonna be in that range, okay? The margin of error of software estimation, I couldn't even give you a number, and I think even if I did, it'd probably be too conservative for reality. But let me just say, it's huge. And it's bigger the more you're estimating. So estimating just what you're going to do every sprint or just what you're going to do every task and figuring out what that's going to take and getting it out there and only making a small change and then measuring the impact on the business. That is the smartest, leanest, most agile and efficient way that you can use your software team to produce value. Anything less than that, you're completely wasting things. You're going to make work more difficult. You're going to make people like their job less, and you're going to be less successful. So I will try to convince you more of that as this channel goes on, but I hope this at least has planted some ideas for you and some things that maybe you can talk to other product owners, other owners of businesses, other people who've done software efforts with more lean consultancies and companies. And I think you'll find some of them should validate some of what I'm talking about. That's pretty much it. Just like yesterday, this is a bit of a rant. But I will come back in the next video and probably revisit a few of these things because I can think of a couple other things I want to talk about that I did not. But I think for today, that should be more than enough. And I'm starting to get roasted by the sun now. So thank you. And if you like this video, please, give me a like, subscribe. I plan to do this every day for at least the next few months, the foreseeable future, to try to just really get as many of my concepts as I can get out there. And I really am looking forward to comments that you might have about, situations where this didn't apply or where you think I'm totally off base because, I'm learning like the rest of us. But thank you. Thank you for watching.